Here's a quick disclaimer. The views, statements, and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers. The statements are not intended to be product claims or medical advice. Hi, Diana Freich here. I'm the host of the Gooder Podcast, where I get to talk with the powerhouse women in the food, beverage, and wellness categories about their journeys to success and their insights on the industry. This episode is brought to you by Retail Voodoo, a brand development firm. Our clients include Starbucks, Kind, REI, PepsiCo, Hi-Key, and many other market leaders. We provide strategic brand and design services for leading brands in the food, wellness, beverage, and fitness industries. So if your goal is to increase market share, drive growth, or I'm going to say crush the marketplace with new innovative ideas, let's have a chat. Give us a call. You can find out more at retail-voodoo.com. Well, I am very excited to introduce Miss Lucinda Wright, CEO and co-founder of Cask Kettle, a brand creating a new segment in the spirits industry. I'm not going to give too much away because I want her to tell the story. I think y'all are going to be pretty excited about this. Now, prior to Cask Kettle, Lucinda led the innovation strategy, marketing, and sales practices at JPG Resources, a consultancy that supports startup and young accelerated growth brands in the food and beverage industry. Hey, we got a little in common there, yo. Love that. She was also the director of private brand innovation over at Meijer. For those of you that don't know, it's a major retailer where she created the R&D, culinary, and global sourcing departments that drove growth via new products across all categories. Lucinda began her marketing career at Kellogg Company in brand management. During her tenure, she rose to VP of marketing and served in leadership positions on large global brands and emerging businesses, as well as led the innovation team and played a key role in the acquisition of Cache. That's a big one. Welcome, Lucinda. Hello, hello.
Hi there. Thanks for having me on the show.
Of course. Okay, I got to find out, where are you located?
So our company headquarters is Battle Creek, Michigan. So you heard the Kellogg piece of that. Our distillery is in Temperance, Michigan. Absorb the irony of that, given Prohibition. And I physically live in a little tiny town near Grand Rapids, Sparta, Michigan. So obviously we're a Michigan-based company. Yeah.
Well, you have been a busy human this last year. I went out and did some homework on you. You've been on a number of podcasts. People are talking about you in the good ways. So let's make sure we're clear about that. I did notice that you were on the Retail Perch last summer. I love those guys. They're hilarious. I don't know if you remember that recording, but I really love what the work that they're doing over there on their show. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about Cask Kettle. Tell us, how did it start? Why did you start?
Well, so you mentioned that my last role was at JPG Resources, which is an innovation company, food and beverage company. And so we had, like all companies, had a budget meeting every month. And I'm sure you and everyone listening to this probably shares a similar experience with budget meetings, as in they're not super fun, right? Not fun meetings.
Sometimes.
And this was no different. Yeah, not fun, not fun. Frankly, everyone was really cranky with each other. And the head of the supply chain practice turned to me and asked me if I wanted a coffee, because I'm a known coffee diva.
Okay.
And I said, not unless it has some alcohol in it to get me through this meeting. And he looked at me and said, well, we've been working in concentrates. And I said, oh, that's right. And that broke the mood, because it's an innovation company. So the minute you start talking about super fun and, interesting things, everyone started then riffing off, well, let's think about this. How could we take this, coffee machine that's sitting in the break room that doesn't, really as a coffee diva thrill me, and incorporate the emerging trends that we see out there and do something unique at the intersection between coffee and alcohol. So that just lit the flame, if you will, or was the spark. And it took us a year and a half to work through the technical difficulties of it. And also, just as I would have advised any other client, in the meantime, we confirmed consumer interest. You shouldn't go off and launch a business just because you think it's a great idea. In my personal opinion, the first check I wrote out of my bank account was quantitative consumer validation. And as you mentioned, I worked in innovation now for 30 years. I've led innovation teams at 5 companies. So when we validated this idea, and all of the thousands of new ideas that I've been a part of validating, there's never been one consumers were more excited about than this one. The top 2 box range between 87 and 93%, which just doesn't ever happen. So we said, okay, we're at the end of our careers. Who would have thought? But we think we have the wow idea. So we risked it. I stepped out of a paying job and have been leading this startup for the last, 3, this is our going into 4th year.
Wow, that's fantastic. It's so interesting what you were talking about, because we, as a firm, a brand development firm over here, we do spend a lot of time in data ourselves, particularly with those brands that are looking for innovation, of course, but as we're looking at market opportunity. And isn't it interesting that you tend to find the big ideas where the data isn't?
Yeah, where the intersection, and we found that coming out of, running an innovation practice at JPG for, almost a decade. And just a plug for my old company, we really were 3-4 years out from anything you would see in market. So it really does, as an organization, operate on that front end. And what I know in working with lots of people on launching their dream or growing their young brand, or even helping large companies find new white space, is that the intersection between 2 categories that haven't intersected ever before is really ripe white space out there, especially if they're 2 large categories like coffee and alcohol, with trends, with CAGRs and growth trends that have been growing and you expect and see will continue to grow. So I encourage anybody out there who's in innovation, and that's their role in their job, to probe around in the hybrid area.
Okay. Well, let's get really specific. What is the product? How does it work?
So here is a standard Keurig style single pod cup, 40 ml cup. And in here, I don't know if you can hear it. Let me show you what's in here. Here's the cup. I got to try to get this for you. Is liquid distilled spirits. So traditional, in this case, I'm showing you our Mexican coffee. So this is, here we go, tequila, which like a silver tequila, which I pay a lot of money for. When I go to the distillery, I pet that. I talk to the tequila. So it's liquid tequila and liquid concentrated coffee. This happens to be Costa Rican coffee. It's a South American coffee. A little Mexican chocolate. And if your palate's really, really good, you'll get a little tequila rosé on the end. So it's liquid distilled natural flavorings, coffee, and spirits all together, highly concentrated. So all the brewing system is doing is diluting. That's all it's doing. And so it's meant, so they're, the K-Cup business is about 4.5 billion. About half of the households in America have one sitting on a counter or, in a bar or whatever. And then that's growing. And because it's liquid, if you have a Keurig, it's intended to go through it if you want it hot, but you can also go cold. You can pour it in a mug, or put it in a cocktail shaker with ice, a couple of shots of water, a little bit of Clue, and you have a coffee. You have a coffee martini. So it is super versatile. In the U.S., obviously, We talk about it as being a K-pod. Outside the US, though, for people who are into international businesses, it would be a liquid instant. Where
Okay.
in countries where they don't have Keurig machines, but instant coffee is big, like South America, in Asia, and other parts of the world.
Interesting. Okay.
And the ABV, for those of you who are familiar with the world of spirits, the ABV in each of them runs from 25 to 38%. So these are high proof.
Yeah.
Now, by the time you dilute it, though, it between 4 ounces and 8 ounces, however strong you want or what you want to do with it, it drops it to something that's like a glass of wine or a beer.
Gotcha. So this is intended to be a hot or warm beverage.
It is intended. However, the kids out there really like their iced coffees. I don't get it. I'm a hot woman straight up, although I have been converted over to the coffee martinis. So the size of the opportunity and the idea was definitely born out of a hot cocktail.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, it was. And as we have progressed, though, other revenue streams have opened up, like the cold side, like bars and restaurants versus at home with the Keurig. So the beautiful thing for me as a CEO of this business is that our opportunities have just expanded, not contracted.
Yeah. I can imagine hospitality, hotel industry could really benefit from a product
what's interesting is
that.
During COVID, they pulled a lot of that stuff out.
Right.
And before COVID, we really didn't have bars and restaurants that were super interested in us because there were so many bartenders doing all kinds of craft cocktails and going crazy. But now that's not true, given the labor market and the challenges that bars and restaurants face. Our team out of Reno called me today. Actually, they've been out selling. And one of the bar's owners said that we're now a bartender's dream, because we've already done everything for them. We've already layered all the flavors. We've already combined the alcohol, the coffee. All they have to do is add water and some cream on top, or a froth, like this, froth it, and you're set. So you don't have to know a lot. You don't have to have hot coffee percolating, which has been sitting there for 47 hours and no one wants it anymore. Or try to come up with all of the various flavors to layer in, like we've already done it for them. So we're solving a problem, because, to be clear, in innovation, it's sort of a pet peeve of mine that mostly 99% of the time when we talk about innovation, it's problem solution. And we really aren't that. Unless you count it as a problem that you have a Keurig that sits idle after 10 a.m. and this is a way to work that baby, all night. We're mostly about surprising and delighting, to be honest. I mean, it's not a problem solution. Of course. It's about surprising and delighting. And innovation can come from that space.
Absolutely.
But now, in the bars and restaurant world, we are actually solving a problem, which is kind of interesting to me, because that wasn't the inspiration for the brand, but it's now a unique opportunity.
Gotcha. Okay. So I'm just, and do you need to have a separate machine for this? You can just use the machine that's in your home.
You just use the machine that's in your home. It's, make sure the mug's underneath, because it's liquid. So it's going to come right out. And all the machine does is take hot water, dump it in, and dilute it. So it washes the cup out. There's nothing icky in there because it's liquid. And that's all you do. So you could have, someone who's not 21 right behind it, run a cup of coffee through there. There's nothing in the system that stays, and all the hot water just washes through. And it doesn't have to be necessarily a Keurig. It can be any pod machine.
Type of machine.
Now, it doesn't work in Nespresso. Nespresso is a closed system.
Yeah.
And that's a capsule. But only 10% of the households have an espresso.
Yeah.
So it's not that big of a deal.
Okay. Well, so I have interviewed a few women on the show that are in the spirits industry. Beverage in general is so different than other kind of consumables. Of course, the tactical experience is similar, of course, running P&Ls and that sort of thing. But when it comes to the community and the world of alcohol brands, I still feel like it's very much influenced by this prohibition type of machismo. Is that true, or is that kind of my sense?
No, no, you're right. And, before I answer that further, I just want to, remind everyone sort of why I'm saying what I'm going to say. As you mentioned, I worked at Meyer and I started up the own brand food product development innovation function. And so I was responsible for every category across all of grocery, all of it. And so I've traveled the world doing deals in every country and every category. And so I feel like I have a strong line of sight to the dynamics, pretty broadly across all of CPG, food and beverage. And what I would say is outside the meat industry, which would probably share some similarities, the alcohol industry and spirits even more in particular is very insular. And let me just answer the prohibition first, and then I'll come back to how it's sort of run. What's interesting to me is the laws are so outdated. So, for instance, let me just give you an example. Beer and wine companies can sell to you directly. They can ship to you directly. You can call them and you can say, I want to order from you, and it can come to you, unless your state doesn't allow, online shipments. But for the most part, states do. They can do that. As a distilled spirits company, we cannot. We can't. I can take it on our website. You can order it, but I have to ship product out to California. That distributor then ships it to a retailer, and that retailer has to ship it all the way back to wherever you are. We're not allowed to do that. When the facts are the body processes all alcohol the same way. There's not a good and a bad alcohol. There's not. The body treats it all the same way. And yet our laws are structured such that there are good and there are bad. And so there are more rules around the bad versus the good. So this prohibition thing is still alive and well in 2023, and nobody's changed the law, and I don't even know when. So you're right. It is frankly crazy to me. But that's the prohibition side. The other part about the category that sort of was embedded in your question is the insular nature of it. What I find in this category more than any other, except meat, is that people tend to spend their whole career in this world and they haven't worked in other categories. So there's very little cross-category knowledge, experience, curiosity, cross-pollination in any way, shape, or form. And it is, largely dominated by men. I mean, that's just true of most categories, to be honest. So that's not terribly different. But the insular part of it is. So when you're a disruptive innovation like us, like bringing something hot into booze that has never existed before, in general, the vast majority of the industry is very suspicious. What are you talking about?
Interesting.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, it is common for the industry, whether it's a buyer, a distributor, a sales rep. I mean, pick any key stakeholder. They actually, brace yourself, think coffee is niche. Coffee is niche. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I said to people, two things. Coffee is niche, and people only drink hot coffee in cold weather states in the winter.
No, they don't really believe that. Do they really?
They do. Oh. They do. I cannot tell you how many times I've had to say to whatever buyer, fill in the blank. I will say, do you drink coffee? Inevitably, they say yes. I say, do you drink hot coffee? Inevitably, yes. Did you stop drinking hot coffee last June? Well, no. Okay. So hot coffee consumption is not, tied to the weather. If anything, hot coffee consumption is higher in warm weather states because there are cultural reasons and traditions that support it. And I'll also say, so let me just be clear. You wouldn't want a slice of Starbucks business. that tiny little company called Starbucks,
Tiny
which
little,
up until recently was all hot coffee, which is the majority of the business. Iced is growing for sure, but it's still tiny compared to hot. I'm like, so that little tiny niche business. But that, people's perception is their reality. Don't bother me with the facts. And so when you have such an insular industry, with people who've only ever done this, and you bring in something that's never existed before, which is hot, into an ambient cold industry, they're like, whoa, up. And you don't come from spirits, which I didn't, and you're a woman leading a startup company. It's like double, triple, quadruple, whoa, up. So you have to break through all that.
So how do you break through that? I mean,
so our strategy has been to find the buyers, distributors who get it like that. What I've learned is when we present the idea, hey, we have boozy K-pods. We're combining coffee and all in one step. There are all these machines out there. We're turning them into bartenders. Done. Yep. The ones that get it like that, we're like, good. I don't try to change no's into yeses. Yep. I try to find the pockets of people that just get it and are excited about it. And sometimes on buying desks at retailers, we do get buyers who came from coffee or snacks or someplace else. It does happen. It doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen. So for instance, my alma mater, Meyer, has been very good to us. Not because I worked from there, by the way. I didn't get any special treatment at all. But what they did do, and Meyer has a reputation for doing this. This is not specific to us. The reputation of giving people a chance, letting them proof of concept, and then expanding it and rewarding them for that. And then once someone does that and you're successful, then you take that strength and you radiate out from that.
Yes.
And so it's so the world of alcohol for innovation, for those people who are in broader CPG, the gestation curve is much slower ramp in the world of alcohol than it would be if you were in a cereal or a snack or a whatever, something else plant-based. That's much faster and quicker. But because of the 3-tier system, sort of the suspicion and, the insular nature of the category itself, it just means that the growth curve is like slower and longer. But when it goes, it goes. And for those of you who are in startups, the multiples within the world of alcohol are much richer as well. Yeah. So it's sort of higher risk, higher reward.
Yes. Interesting. Well, I'm curious. You've been in multinationals and these really large organizations over the time. And here you are leading something new in a new space. I'm wondering if you find yourself leading or communicating in a different way than you did in your previous life.
Well, it's interesting that you asked that. The JPG years sort of were a transition for me from big because we worked with people from ideas. Like people would come to us and say, I have an idea, and we would help them realize it, develop and commercialize it. And we help young brands. And so I had already transitioned to being an advisor, if you will, for a lot of startup CEOs and a lot of women, frankly, CEOs. I'm still on several advisory boards, even though I haven't worked at JPG now in 5 years. Yeah. So that was certainly a transition. And even when you're running a brand, so at Kellogg's, for instance, I ran, it was part of the launch of Nutri-Grain bars. So even though it's a large company, that was a small startup. In our first year, I think we had 22 million in sales or something, right. And then 30. Right. So tiny, right? Tiny.
Well, compared to the org.
Yes. Yes. So I've always run, but to your point, I've run other people's businesses for them, small and large. The difference for me is that now I'm running my own business, right. And I don't have the safety net out there, and we have investors. and people who worked on the business since it started. And I feel that weight. I feel that weight differently. I always felt the weight of delivering and growing and hitting. I have always felt that, but it's a different weight when it's my retirement fund and we're going to,
and your holiday and your,
or family and friends have, given us money. I mean, it's a different type of weight, I would say is the biggest difference. The other piece of that is my other co-founders were all out of JPG. That head of supply chain that I mentioned who asked me, do you want this? He's the active co-founder. So there are 4 of us. 2 of us are active. I run the business and have, the majority share. But he also has been very involved. And I turned 60 last summer, and he's slightly, 40 years of marriage, 60 years on this earth. And what he says to me is, Luce, I don't know how those young folks do it. This is, the degree of difficulty is so high. He's like, I feel like we've spent our whole career and we've gathered the experiences and knowledge base that we have, so that we can now use it for this. Right. Something this complicated and challenging, but yet exciting and pioneering. And he's like, I feel like we've spent our whole life just so we could do this. So there you go.
Well, I think that's true for all of us. I am I'm in that 51 year mark, heading into 52 here before too long. And really, we are only all a culmination of all of our experiences. And it's funny when people say youth is wasted on the young. I don't think that's true. I mean, I think there's a lot of things that in my 20s I did because I just didn't know any better, and I couldn't be who I am today having not done that. So I think every age brings a new way of looking at things. But I marvel at the volume of data and information and rate of change in technology that is happening for people that are in those college years. I think could I be handling the rate of change if I was in my 20s? Or I guess that would be normalized for me because that's just how everything is, but it's quite different. I agree.
Yeah. So no, my statement was not a derogatory statement.
Gosh, I didn't take it that way at all.
Oh, good. Because that's because I actually am very involved with my alma mater, Michigan State, with the Burgess Institute. And I am humbled and amazed at the entrepreneurial spirit of the younger generation. It's exciting to me, and I am excited for them. And I'm actively involved in that program as a mentor.
Oh, you are? Wonderful.
Yeah. So when Pete said to me, he's like, when he said, I don't know how the younger crew does it, he means it from the standpoint of it is challenging, and we have spent a career developing a network and a knowledge base and all of these things. And we need, and it's, challenging for us. Yeah. And so what we've tried to do is go back and make sure we continue to, put a hand out and help younger entrepreneurs too, because it's just incredibly difficult. But you're right. They have a world. It never would have occurred to me in my 20s
to start a business.
Yeah, no, never.
No way.
Never, ever.
No way.
Now I ran other people's business. I mean, I still wanted to run businesses because I ended up doing that. But I'm excited for my 35-year-old daughter who leads the innovation team for a large company, and this is her second company where she's done that. So she's heavily involved in innovation and leading and growing in her own way. And I'm excited for the opportunities that she'll have.
Yeah, I think so. And mentorship is such a special gift because it's definitely reciprocal. There's a lot of shared learning and growth there. And but I definitely much prefer to be my age now.
Yeah, it's I think, I don't know, every decade I did something crazy, right? I started my career at Whirlpool in supply chain, but wanted to be in brand. So left everything, went back to grad school and bagged my way into Kellogg's and did that, for 10 years. And then threw it all in the air, and then went to the retail side, and people thought I was nuts for that. Oh my gosh, your career's over. And if anything, that was, even. So I do believe I have a very strong tolerance for risk, and either that or a high ADD. I don't know, but
both.
Yeah, both. So I would be the last person to tell someone they shouldn't,
do anything. Yeah.
Do anything that they think they want to do and have a dream that they should 100% do it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about milestones for a moment. We could talk about career milestones, or we could talk about Cask and Kettle milestones. What are you right now wanting when you're thinking back, what major milestones are contributing to what is happening positively in your world today?
Well, so we just had our third consecutive year of growth at Meyer.
Nice.
October, November, December in the world of alcohol is a big deal.
Right.
Is a big, it is. So we just came off of our third year of double digit growth with Meyer, which is hard to do when we're the smallest brand, in the holiday
category.
set.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So that's great. We have strong repeat orders from our distributors out in the Northeast and the Midwest. So
wonderful.
That is great. I get phone calls all the time from consumers who are excited about the business. We're starting to grow more in bars and restaurants because we're solving a problem that didn't exist before. We're looking at international. People are coming to us with some international opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
So it's it's never dull in my world. Now, I'm a fairly aggressive A-type personality. So would I like the growth to be faster? Would I like things to be bigger, faster, sooner? Sure. Yes, I would. But you have to accept, if you're going to do something this disruptive, that it's just going to be, every challenge you overcome, there's going to be another hill you have to climb. And you have to have a marathon mentality.
Of course.
And if something goes wrong, our number one investor, said something to me yesterday, which is that what she thinks is key to our success is our ability to, when trials and tribulations happen, we face them and we, get up and we continue to push on. Like, we don't let that define us. We problem solve around it, and we just push through.
Gotcha.
So if you believe in the idea, if you believe in the business and that it can be successful, and you have a great foundation to it. So the other thing about our business and milestone this year is we improved our internal gross margin by 11 points.
Wow.
We had to dramatically re-engineer our packaging in order to, get some operational efficiencies.
Sure.
So it's taken us a year to get everything in order. But I think having a strong foundational economic structure, an idea that consumers and shoppers are excited about and want, and trends that make you feel optimistic, and expanded channels. Those are the variables that I think any CEO looks at to say, okay, what's the health of the business? Is it healthy? Can we make it healthier? What's the trajectory look like? So those things are all good for us. Our challenge, like every other startup in the world, and even some that are not startups, is just cash flow and financing, right? Especially if you're disruptive and you're in spirits, you just can't generate enough cash, even though, our margins are now, great, especially for a startup. You can't when you have to drive consumer understanding and awareness of something that is brand new. And what I've learned is, in the world of investment, the majority of the investment money goes to tech and life sciences. And what is out there for CPG is really driven by plant-based. And there's a very small sliver that is open to their portfolio investing in alcohol. And then you take spirits, even within alcohol. And that's the thing that's been the most surprising to me, frankly, is given the size of the category and the robustness of our idea, the access to investment has been highly challenging. Probably more challenging than even all the technical side and the insular and the misunderstandings and perceptions and all of that stuff. So that's the thing that we're focused on now, because if you don't have investment and cash, then it doesn't really matter. None of the rest of it matters.
Well, after we finish recording, let's you and I talk. I have somebody that I should introduce you to. Let's make sure that happens, hey?
Yeah. And then the other thing I would say about in the world of investment is that not only are there those challenges, but a very small slice of investment money comes to women, run businesses. Very, 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 very small. Yeah. Our number one investor is a group called the Bell Impact Fund out of Detroit, and they only invest in women owned and operated companies in Michigan.
Wow, so, that's pretty narrow.
We've been blessed with that. We've been blessed with that. And I'm incredibly grateful to them. And so they spend, they have a real mission around that. But I don't know the latest number, but at one point, the, investment money going to women run businesses was like less than 5%. I mean, so when I say a sliver, it's a real sliver. And then you take it into the world of alcohol, when even fewer businesses are run and operated by women, you can just extrapolate from there. Yeah. So it is, again, never dull to be sitting in my seat.
I think in my mind, that's a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, let's put it this way. All of the years of having those budget meetings, we're standing up at Kellogg's and having to justify every day. I mean, it was good practice for being able to answer questions under pressure and frankly run a business. I mean, that's the other thing that people are surprised by, is that we're a small startup, but people don't feel like that. They look at our packaging and our branding, or they see, something that I'm talking about, or the way we think about the business, and we think and run it like a CPG company would run it, even though we're small. That's the way I grew up. And so that's the way we think about things.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so as you are going down this path, I'm sure you've probably had a number of people reach out to you, but what advice do you find yourself giving the most to people that are following in your footsteps?
That varies depending on, if someone's talking about alcohol versus broader CPG. And since I tend to do more work in the broader CPG as a mentor, especially with the students at Michigan State and the other companies that I'm on advisory boards with, probably number one is the marathon mentality. Honestly, what I think is undervalued as a key driver is just mental toughness. I think that when you come down to it, setting the other things aside, like, you've got a good idea, you've done the ABCs of the business side. People want it. You can make money at the price you have to charge. You have that stuff. Setting that stuff aside. And I provide a lot of advice around that when people have sort of the more technical side of it, and that can range from 1,000 different things, right? But as it relates to the CEO side, or founding a company or growing a company, I think mental toughness is probably the thing I rely on the most, and a perspective that you're just not going to let something stop you. You will rise up, you will figure it out, and you will move forward just like you did the 4 other times. And you have to do that because you also have to do that for the rest of the organization. And if you as the CEO don't have that kind of orientation, then no one else is going to believe in it
Exactly.
either.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's talk about what's next for Cask and Kettle. What can we expect in the next year?
Well, so we're in a handful of states now. Back to the radiation strategy.
Yeah.
We're trying to raise money so we can
Mm-hmm.
continue the growth and build off of those strengths. We think we're close to gaining permanent distribution in a very large retailer. Total Wine actually has already done that regionally, brought us in as a chain level on all 5 of our SKUs. We have 4 decaf coffees and 1 cider, because this is nighttime drinking. This is kick back, let the day go, put your feet up. So it's decaf. These are decaf coffee cocktails. So Total Wine has started to do that regionally, but I think we have another that would be a really major. And we've earned it. I mean, I think we've proven ourselves and we've earned it. But you still have to fight that. Coffee's a niche. You're a small startup. Can you? I mean, that'll always be a challenge. But that would be life changing for us. We are having some conversations that are exciting that I can't talk too much about, but let's just say that are sort of hardware related, sort of some collaboration there. Nice. I know, super excited about that. And international, the whole bars and restaurant side of things, and continue to generate recipes and work that angle. So nothing like super cool sounding. It's the basics really of the business, but we have a number of opportunities that we're pushing forward on that could make just a huge difference to us.
That's awesome, Lucinda. I have really enjoyed our conversation. Our time is almost up. We've talked a lot about, like, you've dropped a lot of nuggets and all this fun stuff about the industry. So I have one question that I want to ask you that I like to ask everybody, and that is this: are there any women leaders or rising stars out there in our industry or not that you would like to elevate or simply admire for the work that they're doing or that they have done?
Well, that's I love that question, and I'll tell you why in a second. I find myself giving you an unexpected answer. And that's because I have been insulated now for so many years as a woman leader. I've sort of have taken my eye off of other women in just been plowing my own ground. But that wasn't the case before this business. As I was, coming up, as they say, Ann Fudge was my aspirant businesswoman hero. I mean, she was who I admired and emulated and wanted to be like. I followed what she said, the changes she made in companies, sort of her perspective, the way she carried herself. So for me, she was the epitome of what I would want to do and be for other women coming behind me. So I do think that having aspirants out there is something that's a gift. I mean, and I encourage people, because I'm embarrassed to tell you that there isn't somebody currently. I mean, Ann Fudge has always been that. Now she's retired. But one quick Ann Fudge story. When we were involved in buying the Kashi business at Kellogg, I led that buy, and we were in competition with Post and Bisco at the time, and Ann ran that. She ran our competition. She ran the company that was our competition. And separate podcast, we could talk about the M&A world and buying and
selling.
My
gosh,
how do you
yes.
do it. I have a strong point of view about women, by the way, and our suitability and our really
interesting
innate advantage frankly,
Yeah.
in that space. But so to make it story short, the Kashi founders accepted our bid, and they told me, they called and said, hey, just FYI, we're having breakfast this morning with Ian Fudge. We're going to tell them the news. And I gasped. I'm like, you're having breakfast with Ian Fudge? And they said, yeah. I'm like, oh, my head. I'm like, please tell Ian Fudge. Like, love her. She's my idol. I can't believe you're having breakfast with her. Blah, blah, blah. They're like, okay, Lucinda, we'll do that. So the Natural Foods Expo, so for those of you in CPG, that's the largest trade show, was going on. And I was there for the Worthington business and the Morningstar Farms business, which I was running at the time. And working, I was out in the aisle, and this, tiny lady, I mean, I just never expected her to be so petite. I didn't know, comes up to me and holds her hand out and says, you must be Lucinda. And I'm like, yes, I am. And she says, I'm Ann Fudge. And I'm like, just blown away. So they had told her that she was my idol, and she had her driver bring her out, how she got into the show, found the booth, came over to congratulate me on, winning the bet, basically, and securing the Kashi acquisition. And I was like nobody, right? Like nobody. I don't even know if I was a director at that point. And so that just gives you a hint of, I felt vindicated to have admired her all these years because I did. And then I admired her even more for just her graciousness and the human being that she was on top of the business.
Yeah.
So, terrible answer other than to say, you now have inspired me to go and start looking around and finding that inspiration again, because I have not had that. And I'm sure there are fabulous women that I could be learning from, for sure.
Yeah. Right now, I have probably what people would have considered to be expected, or I don't know. I mean, I always like to aspire to be to people who do things that only happen once in a lifetime. So I set my bars really high. But the person that inspires me the most right now that I've been following for years, believe it or not, is RuPaul. This man turned drag art form into a powerhouse business. Nobody expected it. And he is living it. And I'm just like, can I do that? He only did that in the last few years, and I think he's in his 60s, so I think I still have time.
Yes, and he looks really great. That's another thing, so I'm like, oh, all this inspiration. But yeah, I mean, that's a great example of
just breaking boundaries and barriers and finding inspiration in the weirdest places.
No, it's great. I actually thought that at this point in my life, I wouldn't be sort of pioneering anymore.
Right.
So much to my sometimes disappointment, but mostly my honor is to try to just keep keeping on and push. Yeah.
Well, Lucinda, really amazing to chat with you today. Just everybody, we've been talking with Lucinda Wright, co-founder and CEO of Cask Kettle. Did you guys just go by Cask Kettle, or is it Cask Kettle hot beverages?
Yeah, Cask Kettle.
Cask Kettle.
Mean, the genesis of the idea was to bring hot into booze. And we do that. That is the opportunity. But now the kids have me all like buying into the iced side and all that.
Don't listen to the kids. Don't listen to the kids.
The majority of our company is young. I mean, I'm the oldster. Everyone else is like, in their 30s or younger. So,
oh my goodness.
And I think that's true.
Where can we learn more about you and your company?
So caskandkettleusa.com. If you just go to our website, And if you ever want to contact me, that's my phone number on the contact.
Oh, you're kidding.
No, I take every phone call.
I love it. Okay, Lucinda, thank you so much for your time today. I'm so happy that we met, and I look forward to seeing all the shenanigans you guys get into.
Yeah, that's a good word, shenanigans.
Yes,
That could be our corporate motto.
it could be. And I want to thank all of our listeners for their time today. Hey, listen, if you like this episode, please share it with a friend. Other than that, I'm going to wish you guys a great day, and we'll catch you next time on the Gooder Podcast.
Produced by Heartcast Media.